Hi, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be working on some projects to winterize our RV and get ready for the coming cold weather, and still working on stuff to try to get the house built. Our first project today is going to be get some insulation on this main water line coming from our well. It's up there about 185 feet, and then the water line turns and goes over to the temporary well house to feed the fifth wheel. When the house gets built, we're going to put a T in here and go into the mechanical room over here in the house. So we've got to get insulation on this and get it ready for the winter, because we don't want our water to freeze. So the first thing we're going to need to do is clean up the edges of the top we cut out of that drum before we sunk it in the ground around the water pipe, and get it ready to serve as the base for the insulation. So if we need to, we can pull it back out of the ground. So I'm going to pull out the grinder, do a little bit of grinding, and then we'll start marking and cutting and doing what we need to do to make that insulated cap. And always wear your hearing protection. I'm about half deaf from my time in the Army, so I got to do what I can to protect what little I've got left. Alright, I've already test fit that to make sure it'll go easily in and out of the hole. So now we got to get a hole in the middle of it so we can put a rope through it and tie it off. And it doesn't have to be perfectly centered, just close enough so it'll be kind of balanced when you pull it out of the hole. And to keep from making a mess as much as possible, we got a cheap old Harbor Freight hot knife warming up down here to cut this foam. Makes it a little easier. And unless we have a really bad winter, we'll get down in the teens sometimes here, but generally it's not excessively cold, so we don't need to insulate like we're somewhere up in the northern plains or Alaska. This little hot knife's just a cheap one from Harbor Freight, since I don't plan on using it to cut insulation for the entire house. It's just for little jobs like this, or cutting rope, or anything that you don't want to make a big mess. And see, it makes a pretty clean edge. And if you don't have a hot knife, this stuff cuts really easy with a regular handsaw. And it doesn't make too much of a mess. Alright, one down. And this foam is what's left over from building the temporary well house. And I'll probably show you that later, because we're going to have to finish putting the insulation in there. And it was made with scrap pallets and offcuts from the sawmill that weren't really big enough or good enough to make a project you'd want to show somebody. And using them kept me from having to go to the big box store and pay a crazy amount for lumber for something that we're just going to take apart once the house is built anyway. Let's see how that compares. Yeah, pretty good. Alrighty. Need about 3-4 feet of rope. That ought to do. just like always, made a mess out of the rope. Ropes, extension cords, and hoses make a mess. Alright, that'll have to go get a washer so the rope doesn't pull through the hole in the barrel lid. I'm talking to my YouTube audience. Are you going to come over here and join in?
No.
No? I figure we ought to try to explain stuff as best as possible, what we're doing, if we're going to teach people about doing the stuff that we do every day. Or at least that I do every day. You go to work, I don't do anything. I don't know if you can see that pipe down in there, but that's what we're trying to insulate. Well, and as per usual, the first go around never works. So back to the cutting board, as it were. Maybe a little too small. That's probably a problem right there. Alright. For expediency, we'll do this the saw way. See what kind of mess that makes. See, it's not nearly as neat, but it's a lot faster than using the heat gun, or the hot knife rather. That's what happens when you're lazy. I got a little off on that one. Since we got to cut so much off of this one, I'm going to use the hot knife so it doesn't make as big a mess. Well, it's ugly, but I think it'll do. Let's try this again. Round two. Let's see if this will go in the hole. Looks like that'll work. Of course, we won't know until it's below freezing and our water freezes or doesn't. Next part of this little project is to make a roof so this thing will shed some water if it does rain. Looks like we need to be 22 and a half on the inside. Yeah, more or less. So we'll make it 22 and a quarter so it's easy to fit down in there. I think that'll work. We got overhang so we can put the tin on, and if we put a spacer block in right there and get it tilted up so that the rain will run off. Okay, that'll work. Let's figure this part out. And I know all the different tool brands have their own fanboys, but I use this DeWalt 18-volt set, not this particular one, but one just like it in Afghanistan for an entire deployment building stuff. And I inherited it from the unit that we replaced, and then I passed it on to the unit that replaced us, and they continued using it to build stuff. So I have nothing but good things to say about these DeWalt battery tools. And no, I'm not sponsored by DeWalt. I wish I was sponsored by DeWalt. At this point, I wish I was sponsored by anybody. All right, that'll work. Now let's go see if this will fit. Let's put the metal on it, see what we get. 4, 15. So if we do a 3-inch overhang on each end, that'll be 25. We'll make it 26. That's easier. That'll work. This tin was salvaged off of an old shed. So rather than throw it away, we'll make some use out of it, at least temporarily. what I said about ropes, hoses, and extension cords. Get tangled on everything. This thing's sharp like a razor. If somebody gets against it, it will definitely cut them open if they're walking by. And since it's only about a foot off the ground, I'd hate to get somebody cut. So we're going to roll these edges over and hammer them in to make it a little bit safer to walk by this thing. And these are seaming pliers. I believe they're still set from the last time I did this. Yep. Of course, it was a little easier last time because what I was bending was on the well house. It was a little bit bigger piece. I'm sure that there's somebody out there that's a roofer that's going to tell me that I'm doing this wrong. I don't know what I'm doing as a roofer. All I know is I don't want somebody to get stitches from walking into the edge of this thing. Straight side, you got the corrugations are a lot easier to bend. Well, let's see if this is going to do what we want it to do. Slide her in right there. That ought to keep the rain off. Heavy enough it's not going to blow off. At some point might need to put some trim on the sides and the front, but I think it'll work for the time being. Well, thanks for hanging out on the farm with me doing this project. Hopefully I'll see you again when we start doing some more, and I'll post some more videos. Y'all have a good day.